Lost on Halloween. It's been 12 years, but that night still plays in my mind like it happened yesterday. I don't want to share my real name because I don't deserve anyone's sympathy. What I did or didn't do can never be forgiven. I was 17, and like any typical teenager, I was more interested in my own plans than in what my family needed from me. My parents had asked me to take my little brother, let's call him Danny, trick-or-treating. He was just 6 years old, full of excitement, and couldn't wait to show off his superhero costume. He'd been counting down the days, practicing his lines, and even sleeping with that silly mask on because he didn't want to take it off. But I wasn't thinking about Danny that night. All I cared about was meeting up with my girlfriend and our friends for a Halloween party. I remember Danny tugging at my sleeve, his big eyes full of hope. "Are we going now?" he asked, clutching his candy bucket in one hand and holding on to my jacket with the other. I brushed him off, telling him we'd go soon, but in truth, I didn't plan on taking him anywhere. I figured he'd be fine tagging along with me and my friends. How hard could it be to watch a 6-year-old while hanging out at a party? We reached my friend's place, and the music was blaring, lights flashing. Everything was perfect for a wild night. I told Danny to stay close, but the minute I saw my girlfriend, I forgot all about him. The party sucked me in, laughing, drinking, dancing. I barely noticed when Danny tugged at my sleeve again, trying to tell me something. I brushed him off, irritated that he was ruining my fun. I don't even remember what he said. At some point, I realized I hadn't seen Danny in a while. Panic started to creep in, but I pushed it aside, telling myself he was probably just playing in one of the other rooms or maybe outside with some other kids. I searched the house, calling his name, but there was no sign of him. The party was so loud, so chaotic, that I could barely hear myself think, let alone find a small child. As the hours passed, the reality began to sink in. Danny was gone. We called the police, but by then, it was midnight, and the streets were deserted. No one had seen him. No one had heard anything. He had just vanished, like a shadow swallowed by the darkness. But what I haven't told anyone, not even the police, is that I did see something that night. It happened so fast and I was so terrified that I've tried to convince myself it wasn't real. But deep down, I know it was. I saw them take Danny. I was standing in the backyard calling out his name when I noticed movement near the edge of the woods behind the house. It was dark and the trees cast long, menacing shadows. But I could see a figure, no, 2 figures, dragging something between them. My heart stopped when I realized it was Danny. He wasn't struggling, wasn't making a sound. He just hung limp in their arms, like a lifeless doll. I wanted to scream, to run after them, but I was frozen. It was like my body wouldn't obey my mind. I just stood there watching as they disappeared into the trees, taking Danny with them. And then they were gone, swallowed up by the darkness, just like that. It felt like hours before I could move again, but by the time I forced myself to run to the woods, there was no trace of them, no footprints, no sounds, nothing. It was like they had never been there at all. I told the police I didn't see anything. I was too ashamed, too terrified to admit that I'd watched my brother being taken and done nothing to stop it. They searched the woods, but of course, they didn't find anything. How could they? Whoever or whatever took Danny didn't leave a trace. Years have passed, and the search for Danny became cold. My parents never gave up, but I knew the truth. It was my fault. I lost my brother that night, all because I was too selfish to care for him the way I should have. I still have nightmares, dreams where I see him standing at the edge of the woods calling for me, but no matter how fast I run, I can never reach him. I wake up in a cold sweat, his voice echoing in my ears, that same helpless tug on my sleeve replaying over and over. So if you're reading this, please, don't make the same mistake I did. Don't let your selfishness cost you something you can never get back. Because no matter how hard you try to forget, no matter how much time passes, the guilt never goes away.